Thank you, Paolo. Let's see if the PowerPoint comes out. Well, my presentation is, of course, a sociological presentation. So I'm trying to cope with the issue of family morphogenesis. The problem is, how do we face the changes, the continuous changes of family forms? And of course, the subtitle is When Families Become Relational Goods. This is more descriptive, but also an interpretative understanding of what is happening. The paper, as you might have seen, is mainly theoretical, but it is based upon empirical research, empirical data, which I have no room to be presented here. Anyway, the contents are as follows. I think that the main problem in facing family morphogenesis is the problem of counteracting the trickle effect of the chaotic morphogenesis of the family, which is going on. I will explain that. So what does it mean to say that the family is a common good? How to read the family in a relational mode? Apparently, everybody understands the family in a relational mode, but I think that very, very few people do understand that. Now, the imperative now is the imperative of what I call relational reflexivity in order to renew the family. So understanding family morphogenesis is really an issue today. How morphogenesis can be steered, and if so, how? My argument is the humanizing or non-humanizing characteristics of a family depend on its social genome. I will introduce this notion of the family having a sui generis social genome. The family, therefore, arises as a relational good from its social genome. Any distortion or transformation of this genome produces new family forms which should be assessed, evaluated, etc., etc. Is it possible to regenerate the family genome? And that's the issue. Now, the sociological issue, from my point of view, is to counteract the trickle effect of the chaotic morphogenesis of the family. At present, as in history, we have the phenomenon of what I call trickle effect, that is, family innovations, family morphogenesis starts, generally speaking, from the upper social strata, then gets into the middle class, and then to the popular social strata. So the trickle effect today is of an individualistic and relativistic culture, because the barrier of the individualistic and relativistic culture are basically the upper social strata. The left side arrow indicates this phenomenon, which is, sociologically speaking, a general trend in history. When the aristocratic family model was substituted by the bourgeois model, there was a big change of the whole society. And when the middle class model changed and substituted the bourgeois family, there was another, I would say, historical era. So what sociology says is that changing the family model means to change the whole society. Now, if you read the right side of the slide, for the future, Amoris Laetitia suggests that the counter effect for the renewal of the family may come from a new popular culture, emerging in the life worlds. So the challenge, historical challenge, is to, in a way, to pass from the left side to the right side of the slide. That is, how to have popular social strating adopting a family form which can become the more widespread model, or the most widespread lifestyle, if you will. So it's a big challenge. It's a big challenge because it is a structural, institutional, as well as life world matter, okay? So the red thread of my argument is precisely this one, to make it clearer. In the past, socially legitimized and institutionalized family models have been those of emerging social strata and movements that have established themselves as the vanguard of cultural change and then spread to the rest of the population. This is what we call trickle effect. Today, trends are characterized by emerging social strata and social movements that evaporate the family because they are bearers of an individualistic and relativistic culture. Therefore, a renewal of the family is possible if and only if new social strata and social movements can emerge capable of reversing the evaporation of the family through a culture of family relations that is more attractive, this is the point, more attractive than the individualistic and relativistic one. So it's a challenge from the point of view of how to make attractive relations, family relations as such, in order to change the way the trickle effect works. Now, the key factor, therefore, is what we call a new relational culture inside every family and connecting families. These two sides, I mean, the internal life of the family and family networks outside it are, of course, linked together very strictly. This is also the idea of how the family produces social capital in terms of more generalized social capital. Now, in what sense is the family a common good? As Professor Shields remarked in commenting my paper, the common good is not of an aggregative type that is constituted by the sum of individual interests, which allows for an increase in individual utility, but is instead of a relational kind, which consists in the sharing of specific relationships from which both the individual goods and those of the surrounding communities arise. So I would stress the fact that the relational kinds mean sharing very sui generis relationship, which are their own qualities and causal properties above all. It is necessary to read the family relational. What does it mean? It means that the family is generated by people, but it is not made up of people. The family is made up of relationships. Generally thinking, we say all the time that the family is a composition of a mother, father, child, etc., of people. No, the family is not a sum of individuals. Is not made up of people, but it's made up of relationships. The issue is that relationships are invisible, immaterial. They are intangible goods, which are subject to poor or distorted reflexivity. And yet, relations are terribly real. That is, endowed with sui generis qualities and autonomous causal power. so much so that they can generate relational goods or relational evils. Now, to understand the importance of relationships, I will suggest to read this slide. Family relationships have an autonomous existence with respect to the subjects in relation. To say that relations exist means that they are outside what generates them. And you can understand that if you look at the two graphs. That is, if you consider the three persons, the three nodes, we say in network analysis, mother, father, and child, now this network has only three relationships of first order. But if you consider the relationality of the network of relations instead of nodes, then you see 9 relationships of first, second, and third order, all extremely relevant to the dynamics of the family. Just to give an idea, the child is socialized, is educated, not by the mother or the father, or the father. It is socialized by their relationship. It is the relationship of first order between mother and father which influences, which educates really the child. And this is a second order relation. Now, if I should comment upon this cluster of relations, the analysis would be very complex, but very instructive how the family works. It's just to give you an idea of how complex is the relationality of the family. And consider the figures here. The arithmetic increase in the number of nodes produces a hyperbolic trend in the number of relations. For instance, if you read the number of nodes on the left side, 2, 3, 4, then you have respectively, in terms of first order relationships, 1, 3, 6. But if you consider also the second order relationships, you go from 2 to 6 to 7 to 27 relationships. So in a family with father, mother, and 2 children, you have 27 relationships working there. This is the idea of how we should understand family as a relational complex. So in order to renew the family, what is needed is what I call relational reflexivity, which is basically different from inner reflexivity, from the internal conversation of each individual, each person. If the family wants to fulfill itself as a relational good, its members must exercise not only individual inner reflexivity, that is their internal conversation of each member, which gives a personal identity, but essentially relational reflexivity. That is, they have to take care of their relationships as such. Talk about them, talk about relationships, because it is the relationship that gives them social identity. There is a big difference between personal and social identity, and this is the difference between individual internal reflexivity and relational reflexivity. Since social relationships are becoming more and more morphogenetic, we need a new relational paradigm of the human person, the family, and the whole society. Now, what is basic is to notice the difference between a relational critical realist paradigm, which is non-relativistic, and what is the emerging relationalist or constructivist paradigm, which is basically relativistic. Relationalist, by relationalist, I mean a view, a sociological view, but also ontological and methodological view, that relations are events, are processes, are interactions, are transactions, as John Dewey say. So there is a big difference, because what I am trying to say is that relations have a structure, which is, of course, dynamic, but it is a structure. It's not an event or a simple interaction. For instance, in the American culture, generally speaking, the concept of relation is identical with interaction. Now, there is a deep structural difference between interaction and relation. Now, this is just an idea of how the morphogenetic process goes on. The morphogenetic process is a sequence of cycles like this one. It starts from a conditioning structure at time 1 and ends up at time 4 with an elaborated new family structure. What is fundamental is to look at the intermediary phase in the time interval 2 to 3, where social networks are working, changing through interactions, the family models, the family lifestyles. It seems to be simple, but in fact, it is very useful in order to make empirical research on how family changes are going on. Now, there are very many different types of social morphogenesis. The typology that I present here is only threefold. There are morphogenetic processes of an adaptive and pragmatic kind, which means that morphogenesis is only a kind of adaptation to the conditioning structure. For instance, when the family models change as a function of how the market, the economic market, works. And there are unstable and chaotic morphogenetic processes which are not regulated at all. There is an unbound morphogenesis there, which is going on in many, for instance, LGTB movements or so on and so forth. What I'm looking for is the third kind of morphogenesis, which is called steered morphogenesis. It is a guided morphogenesis, not directive, but in a way favored by some stimuli that can favor the development of what I call the social genome of the family. Now, one of the basic theses of this presentation is that the relational goods, which will be defined later, are produced by the very specific proper nature of the family, which is its social genome. This is the sketch of the social genome of the family as a relational complex structure without functional substitutes. What is important is to understand that the family is a unique social formation. There are no substitutes of the family. Now, the social genome of the family is that kind of very complex, interactive configuration of 4 elements interacting with each other. The free giving among the members, the gift as a basic value of the family, the norm of reciprocity in the internal exchanges, the couple sexuality, and the generativity, at least desired. Now, the problem is that these 4 elements can be changed in some way, and they can interact in very many different ways. But the social genome is a social configuration of a social form in which these 4 elements work together. They exchange inputs and outputs between them. It seems to be simple, but in fact, it's quite complex. You have my paper, which explains all that. So it is the social genome that makes the family a relational good for itself and for the surrounding community. And the relational goods are innumerable. For instance, trust, cooperation, reciprocity, solidarity, subsidiarity, but I would say all social virtues, because social virtues, differently from individual virtues, are relational, basically, intrinsically. Now, this is the definition of relational goods. Relational goods are those intangible goods that consist of the social relations, not of things, not of persons, not of ideas, but social relations that emerge from subjects reflexively oriented to produce and enjoy together. This is fundamental, producing and enjoying together by the same people in a shared way a good that they could not obtain otherwise. Now, how are relational goods generated? A relational good requires participants to take action with specific personal and social identity. The subjects of a relational good cannot be impersonal. With a non-instrumental motivation, with the conduct of reciprocity, full sharing the relationship as such, not necessarily idea, tastes, opinions, and so on. The commonality, the common good is not to have the same ideas, the same opinion, the same tastes. It is to share the relation. Developing the relationship over time, let it emerge with relational reflexivity. Now, the qualities of the relational goods are as follows. It cannot be exchanged or replaced by anything else, corresponds to basic human needs, and it cannot be monetized nor reduced to standards, particularly those achieved through public legislation, state legislation. Now, the concept of relational goods redefines the map of the common good, which must be distinguished in total good, a collective good available to individuals, which is the result of a sum of interests and does not require interpersonal relations between the associates. And this is about the state and market, as we will see. And the common good as a relational good, it is common as it is the product of the relationships between the participants, the participating subjects who are producers and consumers at the same time. And this is proper to the third sector, for instance, family associations as networks of families. This is a figure for understanding the difference between the public goods, the private goods, and the relational goods. The relational goods are distinguished into primary relational goods, family, and secondary relational goods, which is the more generalized social capital of associations, third sector, civil society organizations, and so on and so forth. I cannot get into the details of this. So the challenge to the family as a relational good, the challenge is the challenge to its social genome. And these challenges are basically affecting the four elements of the social genome. That is, capitalist economy affects the gift culture. The digital or virtual reality affects the norm of reciprocity because of the specific intrinsic qualities of virtual reality. The couple's sexuality is defeated by the sexual revolution and generativity by human artificial reproduction technologies. Now, the problem is how the social genome of the family is changed by these external factors affecting the social genome. And if you change the social genome of the family, you change the family form, of course. Now, to counteract the factors that distort the genome, it is necessary to show that neither acting for profit, nor pursuing virtual reality, nor the sexual revolution, nor the techniques of artificial reproduction can replace the relational good created by the genome. This is an empirical statement. It's not theoretical. This is because the good is in the causal qualities and properties of relationship, not outside them. So we cannot, from the external environment, change the family as we want, because the family has its own proper nature. Let's go on. How can we regenerate the family genome? In two ways: by intervening on the networks of primary relationships, and this is the path generally chosen by educational programs, including the family pastoral care, or by acting on the societal system. And this is the path of social, economic, and cultural policy. These two ways must work in synergy and can do so if family mainstreaming policies are adopted, not only gender mainstreaming. The European Union, for instance, has decided that we have to pursue both family mainstreaming and gender mainstreaming, but in fact, in practice, the European Union is financing and promoting only gender mainstreaming, which works to some extent in opposition to family mainstreaming. So the importance of the networks of families to regenerate family genome is linked to the fact that the relational reflexivity of the family cannot emerge without the interaction between family networks at large. Anyway, some practical examples are the European Union local family alliances. This is a particular configuration of local policies, family-friendly local policies pursued together by public, private, and third sector actors by building cooperative networks between families in the local community. What in the Scandinavian countries is called the family group conference is a very nice experience of making many different families interacting together, particularly families which have troubles with their children. They are collected together, they meet, not only families, but also the teachers, school, the priest of the local area, the relatives, all the people who know the families, and they all interact, exchanging their experiences, and just the interaction builds up new relations within them, within the same families and among them. Another example is the family districts, to configure a territorial area as a family district. This is also another experience. Now, the question, in which parts of society does this new family culture emerge, if it exists? Yes, just 1 minute, yes. We need to look at those social movements, communities, and cultures in which relationality becomes the ultimate concern of everyday life. So the problem is how to focus, to orient themselves towards relationship as such. It is a question of personalizing social institutions, such as marriage and the family. Now, this is the way we can measure the relational goods, which are the product of intersubjectivity together with reflexivity. There are consequences at the juridical level in the sense that in this perspective, we can define family rights as relational rights, which are not substitutes for individual rights, but they are a complement complement to individual rights. So in civil law, even when the intention is to regulate family relationships, there are essentially personae, res, and actiones, persons, things, and actions. Where are relations? I do not find in the law relations as important as individuals, things, and actions. It is necessary to understand that family relationships have a dignity in themselves. The dignity of relationship is a new notion as well. And this means translating family rights into relationship rights. So by this way, we can reverse the trickle effect of which I have spoken at the beginning. So the legislation should promote the family as a producer of relational goods. This is really the meaning of a family policy, of a family-friendly. Okay? So in the future, we are witnessing the emergence of new local popular cultures. Okay. Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you for this.